Eccentric, informed, obsessive. Eddie Jones has a reputation as one of the most feared and innovative coaches in world rugby. However, he's also regarded as one of the most controversial. This is his story. Eddie was born in Tasmania in 1960. His father was an Australian soldier on occupational duty in Tokyo when he met his Japanese mother Nellie, who was working as an interpreter. Jones began his education in 1965 alongside a set of Aborigine twins, Glenn and Mark Ella, who together would help break down rugby's elitist barriers. Back then, Australian sports still had a white-only policy. Eddie was described by Glenn Ella as a small, shy Asian kid who received a lot of racial abuse and sledging from fellow pupils. But being incredibly clever, he quickly learned to give back as good as he got. It was in the late 80s when Eddie Jones would spend his days teaching geography at the cash-starved grammar school before darting across town to Randwick Rugby Club, whom he made 150 appearances for, as well as representing New South Wales. In 1991, having never fulfilled his dream of playing for the Wallabies, Jones took a step back from playing and turned his focus towards coaching his beloved Randwick. In 1995, rugby became a professional sport, and Jones got his big break in Japan at Tokai University. This led to him joining up with the Japan national side later that year as forwards coach, helping them win the Asian Championship. This video is brought to you by Manscaped, the very best in men's below-the-belt grooming. They're offering all viewers of this video 20% off their entire product range and free worldwide shipping with the code RugbyPod. That includes the Lawnmower 4.0 package. So go and use the code RugbyPod at checkout at manscaped.com. Trust us, your balls will thank you, and we can make more videos like this. After Japan came the Suntory Sungoliaths in 1997, and inspired by the philosophy of his old Randwick coach Bob Dwyer, Eddie set about forging his side to play quick, attacking rugby. Having formed admirers with this style of rugby, Jones returned to Australia in 1998 to coach the Brumbies. He had a disappointing first season in charge, with the club finishing a meagre 10th in the Super 12. However, as each season passed, they improved, and in his fourth and final season, they became the first team outside New Zealand to win the Super 12. Off the back of this, he was handed the keys to the Wallabies job. Things started out well under his premiership, with the Wallabies winning the Tri-Nations in 2001 and beating the All Blacks in the World Cup semi-final in 2003. But sadly, the pressure of a home World Cup had triggered Eddie to lapse into an unhealthy routine. His coaching staff have spoken about getting briefings and projects to complete from Eddie as late as 3 a.m. every night. It's understood that one of his assistants, frazzled by no sleep in 7 weeks, had to seek emergency medical help. Post-World Cup, criticisms multiplied that Eddie was too prescriptive with his game plans and had killed all of his player spontaneity. A failure to rebuild the side after 7 straight defeats resulted in Eddie getting the sack. Just over a month later, he signed a 3-year deal with the England Reds, but after finishing bottom of the Super 14 table and only managing 2 wins in his first season, he resigned. Somewhat disgraced and with his coaching career at its lowest ebb, Eddie was lost for the first time in his career. This was when Jake White offered him a short-term contract to be a technical advisor for South Africa. Well, South Africa went on to win the World Cup, and Jones was praised for his role with Captain John Schmidt, stressing that Eddie made the difference and ensured their victory. Later that year, Eddie joined Saracens as a consultant before taking over as director of rugby. However, after disagreements with the board and with the results not going his way, in February 2009, Jones announced he'd be stepping down. He later described this period as the worst he'd had in rugby. After leaving Saracens, Jones rejoined Suntory Sungoliaths and led them to victory in the top league title in 2012. Following the resignation of Sir John Cohen, Jones was appointed in 2012 as head coach of the Japan team. Over the next 3 years, Eddie rebuilt the team, taking them to 4 consecutive Asian Championship titles. And even a stroke in 2013, which left him in intensive care with no movement on his left side, didn't stop him working. In 2015, Eddie's Japan, who previously had won only 1 World Cup game in their entire history, scored a try in the last phase of the match against South Africa to complete the most historic World Cup victory of all time. Like the Springboks, England were also embarrassed at the 2015 World Cup, failing to make the knockout stages at their own tournament. English rugby was a laughingstock, hence the RFU needed to lift England from their bottomless rut, and they knew just the man to do it. Eddie Jones joined England in November 2015, and the turnaround was instantaneous. They won every match they played in his first year in charge, a run which included the 2016 Grand Slam and secured a world record equalling 18 consecutive Test victories. Perhaps the glory of Eddie's previous England successes compounded the agony of their World Cup final defeat, with his England side coming up just short against a ferocious South Africa. England didn't have to wait long for major silverware, however, as they won the Six Nations in 2020. Yet the following 2 years have seen England finish in 5th and 3rd place respectively. And with the national side suffering 3 defeats on the bounce this year alone, questions were being asked about Eddie Jones' future. Nevertheless, after an incredibly impressive 2-1 away series victory against Australia, it looks as if England are back to their best once more. Although Eddie is now 62 years old, he is not mellowed whatsoever and remains as outspoken and confrontational as he did as a schoolboy, such as recently, when he was accused of sexism and misogyny against Emma Raducanu. He's also recently labelled Wales a shithole, Ireland scummy, branded himself a convict, belittled the Lions head coach role, and of course, never misses out on trading verbal blows with the media. Eddie Jones has also struggled to be a good employer. He has one of the highest coaching staff turnover rates in rugby, with assistant coaches, physios, doctors, analysts and psychologists frequently leaving at an alarming rate and describing him as belittling and aggressive. Working for Eddie is a relentlessly intense experience. One analyst was famously sacked as the squad were going through airport security at Faro. Perhaps worse though was when John Mitchell, his defence coach, was brutally fired because he went to watch his son Daryl play cricket on his day off, rather than get on with additional work Eddie had said he should crack on with. But does he treat his players nowadays as badly as he does his coaching staff? Ex-England captain Dylan Hartley, who said players used to hide in their rooms out of fear of Eddie, recalls Marlon Yard once being greeted by Jones in the car park when arriving at training. Eddie asked how he was feeling, and Marlon, who just played a game, said he was a little tired. Suddenly Eddie flipped and told him to fuck off. If you're tired, fuck off. I don't want tired players here. And off he went. Eddie's also known to send strongly worded texts to players at all hours of the night, and his straight-talking demeanour has shattered many players' confidence. However, for all those who react badly to it, there are other players who thrive off it. Eddie Jones is a perfectionist who's always looking to improve. He strives for excellence, and in this pursuit of perfection, being a ruthless operator as he is, he will always leave people in his wake. A maverick or a genius, love him or hate him, there's no denying his success.